Hello, welcome to Cessnock Racecourse in the heart of the beautiful Hunter Valley. Also the home to one of Australia's legendary jockeys, Robert Thompson. In a career spanning over 44 years, it's estimated that Robert's had over 27,000 rides, which is why it was such a pleasure to sit down and talk to him this week about his wonderful career. Robert Thompson, AM, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Steve.
Robert, I'm just fascinated with some of the stats of your riding career, and it's estimated that you've had over 27,000 rides to date. That's a magnificent achievement.
Yeah. A lot of times around in a circle, more or less, Steve. Yeah, trying to catch me tail probably, but it's been great so far.
But tell me how you started, because you started riding at age 14.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. Well, my grandfather was a trainer. I had a couple of uncles that were jockeys. Dad was the foreman, and that's how I started, Steve. I could more or less ride a horse before I could walk, and I was pretty lucky enough. Nearly every birthday and all that, I used to get a better pony to ride, and that's it, Steve. I was always going to be a jockey.
But at age, before you turned 21 actually, you've ridden nearly 500 winners.
Yeah, I had a good apprenticeship. I just failed on my last day. Could only ride one winner, but I started very early, as you say, 14 and 9 months when I had my first ride. I was lucky enough, just before I left school, I used to be able to only go at 11 o'clock. I did a deal with the headmaster. He said I was having too many days off school, so he said, I know you're riding track work and that, Robert. He said, if you come at 11 o'clock, will you still come? I said, yeah, okay, that's a good deal, but I said, if there's a race meeting on, I won't. But that's how it started, Steve. I went and had a couple of barrier trials at Newcastle. I left school when I was 14 and 7 months. The next month I went to Newcastle, had 2 barrier trials, got my ticket, and then the following month I had my first ride at Newcastle at 14 and 9 months old.
Wow. And your first win came in 1973 at Wyong.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's Regal?
Yes, correct, yeah. Trained by my grandfather. And I can still remember if it was yesterday and all that. She was a nice, speedy little mare, and she jumped to the front straight away and led all the way. It was a great feeling.
Fantastic. You've always been a Cessnock boy, so the lure of Sydney didn't attract you?
No, as you said, always been a Cessnock boy, born here, and but as I said, grandfather, he had always 30, 40 horses in work. It was a real family affair, Steve, I loved going to Sydney and riding, and still do, but Cessnock was always home.
Your first Group 1 came in the form of Romantic Dream, listed as one of the best horses you've ever ridden.
Yes, Steve. I still think he is. Early 70s. I was lucky enough to ride him in Brisbane. I won 2 Group 1s on him up there, 2-year-olds. The first one was called the Size Produced Stakes, and then a couple of weeks later it was called the Marlborough Stakes, the 2-year-old, which has changed its name a lot of times now. But that day he beat Family Man run second and Surround run third. He absolutely bolted in and beat great horses and all of that. And to this day and all that, I think he's probably the best horse that I've rode to win on.
Yep. In fact, you won major races in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide and Perth on that horse.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, he won in 5 states of Australia and all that. He was absolutely a great horse. Early on, he was trained by Ron Inglebit from Muswellbrook. That's when I won on him in Brisbane, and then later years, Bart Cummings trained him, Tommy Smith trained him, and when I won on in Perth, George Hanlon trained him. I won the Lestier Stakes on him there.
Fantastic. In recent times, you've also won the Arrowfield Stakes and the OJC Oaks in 2008 on Heavenly Glow.
Yeah, correct. That filly was early trained by her owner, and that Ross Stitt from Taree, which I've had a long association with. and she did very well there, early 3-year-olds. And I said to Ross, I think she's worth a crack at the good 3-year-old race in Sydney. You better send her to someone down there. And Alan Denham got hold of her, and we were lucky enough to win those 2 Group 1 races. She was a very smart 3-year-old staying filly.
What do you think of the current crop of riders these days? Particularly when we talk about the young kids and their technique of riding with the toe in the irons.
Yeah, Steve, well, you know, the current crop, you know, you could, as they used to say in the olden days and all that, you could just throw the colours in the room and whoever grabbed them, well, you'd be happy to chuck them on, and that goes today. We've got a great bunch of riders and all of that. Times have changed, and you've got to go with the times and all that, but I haven't, because I've been going around so long, and I always say the old story, Steve, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So, but that's the way they've gone these days. They're riding a lot shorter, toe in the irons. It's great to see when it first started off and all that. Nearly every race day there was someone falling off or losing irons. At least they've started to get that a lot better these days. But yeah, that's, as I said, that's the way times have changed, and if they think they can get the best out of a horse that way and they feel comfortable, well, so be it.
And the controversial whip rules, Robert, what's your opinion of those?
Yeah, well, I suppose when you look at the old films and all that, the old slap happy and waving away and all that, it's tidied it up a hell of a lot. But I still think there could be some room for more improvement in it, Steve, and more flexibility, put it that way anyway. So, but eventually we might all get it right one day.
Robert, you recently rode your 4,300th winner actually at Cessnock, and that, the list goes on of your achievements within racing industry over a career spanning 44 years. It's a wonderful achievement.
Yeah, it's been a long one, Steve, and I've really enjoyed every day of it, and I still enjoy riding. So racing's been very good to me, and so have a lot of people also.
The pinnacle of every jockey, I would imagine, would be to ride on the biggest race and the biggest stage in Australia, the Melbourne Cup. How many rides have you had in the Cup?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to have one anyway, Steve, for a Cessnock boy. I think I'm pretty proud of that, but it was a horse trained by David Atkins, and he was at Maitland at the time, and a horse called Reckless Tradition in the 86 Cup, and we run 7th. He ran a good race. The start before, we were lucky enough to win the Moonee Valley Cup on Cox Plate Day. So that was a big thrill. That was the year Bone Crusher and our Waverley Star were there that day, and was lucky enough to win the Cup that day. But yeah, it was an absolutely great experience and a great thrill to ride in the big race.
Robert, you've also been inducted into the Australian Hall of Racing Fame in 2015. Another great achievement.
Yeah, great, big achievement that was, Steve, and all that. That was like, you know, probably the best winner I've ever rode, I guess, and all that, and it was an absolutely thrill.
Well, may it continue for another 44 years, Robert, and it's a pleasure to talk to you today. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely pleasure to talk to you too, Steve, and thank you very much.
The first time I heard about Robert Thompson was from perhaps the best judge I've ever known, a Randwick trackman called Bob Jones, and he said, look, there's a kid riding around Muswellbrook. This has got to be 40 years ago. And he said he's absolutely outstanding. He's a top apprentice. This was before Malcolm Johnson, before Darren Beedman, before even probably Ronnie Quinton. And he came to town and he was very, very good. And this punter, look, he scored plenty of big wins on Robert, but the point with Robert is Robert was an outstanding apprentice. He was an outstanding jockey, and he's an outstanding veteran. Now, it's not very often you get a trifecta like that, I can assure you. You get champion apprentices. Some jockeys get better with age, some lose it quick. But Robert Thompson, he's matured well. He's probably the Grange Hermitage of jockeys. He's still, give him a bit of time and look, the flavour still flows. But no, an outstanding rider, outstanding jockey, but more importantly, outstanding on ground level too. No, He's carried himself throughout a long career, so well, both in and out of the saddle.
Yeah, well, I think the first time I met Robert, I couldn't be mistaken, was when he went up to Brisbane to ride over one carnival. I think it was a carnival time, and Phyllis, his mum, asked me to keep an eye on him in Jockey's room, so he's, doesn't do anything wrong, I suppose, or probably not knowing what was happening up there in the room. But no, he was quite pleasant, yeah. He'd done everything right, so it was quite good. Then later, when I was riding with TJ Smith, Robert was getting a couple of rides outside of, from my rides. We used to have 3 or 4 horses in a race, and Robert was riding quite well at the time, and Tommy was used to put him on and hold him below, used to get up and knock us off, so that wasn't very nice of him anyway. But no, it's been a great pleasure, and he's had a great career right throughout, and it's very honoured to know him.
Bra.